Hey guys, welcome to Rockstar Superhero Podcast number 4. Today's guest is my old friend, Kevin Lynch. Kevin and I met back in 1987. We were on board the USS Andrew Jackson, which was a nuclear submarine based in Groton, Connecticut. I had joined the Navy earlier that summer and had absolutely no idea what I was about to experience. And as you can imagine, it was pretty weird. Nothing worked for me, so they stuck me in the galley. Kevin ran the galley. It seems to me that the same Kevin I knew back then now uses his drive and personality to achieve great things for others. Today we get a man driven to singular purpose because Kevin is the founder of the Quell Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to lifting the mask and ending the stigma that surrounds mental illness. Recently, Kevin was a guest at the White House for his work with the foundation, and I can't wait to find out more. So I invite you to dig in and take action. Check it out, because this is a good one.
Nice job. Jeez, it was the Andrew Jackson, huh? I forget which boat they were.
Yeah.
I was on a few of them, but I finished up on the Boston in like 95, 96.
Nice.
Yeah.
How many years did you do?
I did just over 12.
Oh my gosh. Why? So now let me ask you the question then. Why 12? Why did you do 12?
I got hurt on one of the deployments, and I had to have surgery on my knee. And after I had the surgery, they said, we can't send you back out to sea on the boats, but we can put you on a surface ship. So you know how the rest of that conversation was. Like, yeah what self-respecting bubblehead would ever go to the surface? So I took my severance check and I took off.
Wow.
That's when I moved down to Florida.
Yeah.
So I spent the next 16, 17 years down in Florida.
So did you wander the world like Kane, in Kung Fu? I mean, what did you do when you were in Florida? Because I don't really know. I think you taught, right? Or you were working at a college?
No, I was going to college. So actually,
Okay.
I was working at a hospital down there, and I got picked up in '96 or so. I got picked up with HCA Healthcare, and I spent the next 16 years with them. So I worked in 3 of their hospitals and at their division office. I was primarily finance, and then I went into the operations side of the house where I could, have patient contact. I could make a bigger impact instead of just, blowing out spreadsheets and crunching numbers every day, which was cool, but it ran its course.
Yeah, yeah.
So I got to that point in my career where the next step was like a VP of operations or the chief operating officer. And at 45, I didn't have a degree. So that's what they were looking for. And that's why I ended up going to school, like in 2008, in that time frame somewhere.
Wow. So how old are you now?
52.
Okay, so you were only a few years older than me on board the boat, and yet it felt like you were this whole generation, right? You had just this wealth of experience in that 3-year difference, right? Because you're 3 years older than me.
Yeah, and well, that's it. It was just on the submarine fleet because I recently connected a couple of times with other people on the boat, like Brian Johannes, who lives over here in Massachusetts. I'm older than he is, but I looked up to him like he was a god. I mean, he was the guy who intimidated the crap out of me, pushing through, enter MCC.
Right.
Like, get the hell out of here, kid. Yeah, but yeah, so I communicate with him and Willie all the time.
It's funny. I remember when you said what you just said, it reminded me of the only time I tried to get my dolphins. And I don't know if you recall this at all, but it was probably June of '89. And Scott Van Curen had just gotten his, and I don't know if you recall Scott. Scott became.
I remember Scott well.
Yeah, he became a corpsman. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think he ended up. I think he just got out. I think he was a senior chief or a master chief. He went.
I think he was
the whole
yeah,
route.
no kidding, right? Yeah, senior chief and Jamie Mercereau.
Oh yeah.
Moose.
Yeah, what happened to him?
Moose just retired, master chief.
Wow.
Command master chief.
No, of course he's
Come on.
He's freaking Moose. He's Moose, of course. I mean, he's the bull, man.
Yeah, he started with everything he said except when he was going to tell you to go off, and then it was dead on.
Yeah, man. Those were weird times for me because I made some really great friends, but I also it's not that I made enemies, but I just so didn't fit in, man. I mean, it wasn't my world, and I didn't grow up as a blue collar kid. I was not that, and I don't mean like I was white collar foofy. I was the kid that his dad was gone a lot. My dad worked a ton. Dad sold cars and went to new dealerships and set them up and did all this stuff.
Yeah.
So we moved. I mean, before I was in the Navy, we moved, I think, 17 times.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I'm 49 now, Kevin, and I've lived in 51 places in my life.
Oh,
Isn't that insane?
that's insane.
Yeah,
That's hard. How do you get grounded, grow roots?
Well, you don't, but you end up recording podcasts because you're so comfortable in your weird skin that you don't care what people think.
That's exactly right. You had to learn to adapt and fit in no matter where you were.
Yeah. The problem, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
I was just going to say that the only thing is, I can interview a guy like you, for example, and I don't necessarily have the, what would be the word, the vocabulary of what you're talking about, right? So what will always kind of throw me off, right, is when you start mentioning, well, X, Y, and Z about your particular thing, right, your project or whatever you're doing, and I'll just glaze over because I have all this life experience and I have a decent vocabulary, but you know what I mean? I just get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah. Well, it really depends on who you surround yourself with. I mean, I get lost in that too. Some environments, I don't feel like I belong in those environments. But I think a lot like yourself. But you know what? This is who I am. I'm going to fit in no matter what. And I have a presence. I mean, I'm 6'4", 230, 240.
Yeah.
And you can't ignore me.
Yeah, I'm still scared of you, dude. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you through a microphone, or excuse me, on a video camera on a laptop, and you still intimidate me. So it's good, man. Those were
awesome.
good times.
I'm glad we did this. Thanks so much. Yeah, I remember now. You came out from California, right?
Oh no, West Coast. I just come in from Oregon.
Oregon. Okay. Yeah.
But
okay.
close enough.
But knew everything about sports. You were like a sports fanatic.
Yeah. Tons of sports and music.
And music. Yep.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Andrew Jack. So did you ever get your dolphins?
No. What I ended up doing, so the AJ was my only boat. So here's what happened. I'm sorry, podcast listeners, because we're talking about Rob Jones all of a sudden. But what happened is I went on the boat, and I was not motivated at all. And Cobb. So if you remember the Cobb on the Andrew Jackson.
There was a couple of Poppy.
Oh no, Olsen.
Oh yeah, Master Chief Olsen.
Yeah. He was my only experience. So I mean, I came on in '87, and then the boat did one tour, and then we went to Charleston and went to dry dock, and we cut it up.
Oh, right. Okay. You had no shot at it.
I had no shot at it. And trying to do anything, in a dry dock. I mean, we tried, but I mean, one, I wasn't motivated. I really wasn't.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be there. I knew I had really bitten off the wrong thing, right? I was in the wrong space.
Yeah.
And Cobb knew that, and he ended up getting me an audition with the Navy band in Charleston.
Did he really?
Yeah. I mean, that guy, I don't know what it was, but he really took me under his wing, and he got me an audition. And dude, because I was such an arrogant little you-know-what,
yeah,
I went and did that audition and failed. And I'm going to brag a little. I'm a really good drummer, and I failed that audition because I took it for granted. I totally just I got this. I'm not even going to try. I did not try at all.
Right. It's the Navy band.
Exactly. How hard is this? And I failed, and I walked back on the boat in Cobb's office because we were actually on dry dock, right? So we had the what do you call it? What do they call those things? Not the ferry. The
barge?
The barge, thanks.
Yeah.
You can tell I've been out. And the barge, Cobb's office was on the left when you come in through the door. And I walked in, and I tried to scoot past his office really fast. And he goes, "Jones, come here." And he goes, "So tell me the truth." And I just looked at him with these puppy dog eyes. I was like, well, I guess. Kind of the whole I did my best, but I was totally lying.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, just so you know, you got one more shot." Because when the command master chief called me up from the band, I told him, "I knew you were the real deal, and give him another shot." And the next day, the command master chief from the band calls me up and says, "Hey, Jones, wanted to let you know that we thought the audition that we sprung on you," because they did do that. They sprung on me, "was unfair. So we're going to give you 2 weeks to prepare." And I absolutely practiced my ass off, and we went in
Yeah.
and I killed it, which was great. I mean,
Nice.
renewed my, but I had to re-up. So I signed up for another 6 years.
You did?
I did 8 years total.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you were in the Navy band for the balance of it.
Yeah, for the balance of it. I was in Norfolk at Sinklant, and then I re-upped again to go to Seattle. So I wanted to get close to home so I could, quote unquote, get out and, and have a job and a house and all that stuff. And I ended up a year and about, 9 months, and they had an overabundance of billets or whatever the term is. I'm sorry again.
Yeah,
but
you're right.
But they had an overabundance, and the drummers, there was there's too many drummers in the Navy. So I asked for it out, and I was out 4 months later. I got out December 30th, 94.
Wow.
Yeah. So I did basically I re-upped for 4 and got out a year and a half, approximately later. And then all hell broke loose. I got divorced. Just life completely fell apart. It was really, really brutal. And I feel so sorry that listeners are like signing up to hear about you, and it's me talking. But that's what happened. Yeah, I just my life completely fell apart, and then I got remarried eventually, and my life grew in extraordinary ways. So I'm here.
Well, good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. So how much do you crop any of this stuff, any of these conversations?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you can literally say whatever you want. You can swear. I mean, you can do whatever you want. We're not.
Yeah, you decide.
Exactly. Yeah. I do keep most of it because I actually like it to be real and a little ugly. You know what I mean? Because this is reality. I mean, this is who I am. So I try to be this, what I call the good Christian boy, right? I mean, I have my faith and all the things I do, and I have the walk that I try to achieve. But I also know that I'm a human being, and I don't want to gloss that out because it's pious.
Yeah.
I want people to hear the real dude, and I want people to hear the real dude I'm talking to, right? I want to know your story. And I love the fact that you put it out there online, Kevin, and you said, okay, this was me. And I realized I gotta change the way things are because nobody cares. Nobody cares that people are walking around with mental illness or they're afraid. You know what I mean? Whatever's going on. I really want to hear that story. I want to know why you ended up getting in the medical field when you went to Florida. What initially flipped that switch for you to go in that direction? And then how did the Quell Foundation come about? Because that'd be really killer.
Well, I happened to get into the healthcare field when I went down there. Actually, I get out and I opened up a bakery. I was doing wedding cakes, things like that, charging huge dollars to make huge wedding cakes.
Wow.
I went on and did the whole master chef thing because I love doing that, but it just wasn't working out. I don't want to be working on my weekends. So a friend of mine asked me if I could help them out at a hospital part-time on a per diem basis, crunching some numbers and building spreadsheets because I got into that stuff for some reason. So I ended up doing that and working in the finance department for a number of years for the same company. So I went from the Navy for 12, almost 13 years into HCA, which is a national company, a for-profit healthcare system in Nashville. And I worked for them for the next 16 years. I really enjoyed working with the patients and shaping young people. I think that was important. I've always... some people just want to develop and help other people out, and that's kind of my gig. I mean, that was the military, that was food service, making people happy, cooking the food, and then in healthcare, patients, going and chit chat with them in their rooms. Nobody goes to the hospital, because they want to. And then when I got up to that brick wall or that glass ceiling, whichever term you prefer, I wasn't able to get that next big job because I didn't have a degree, and I didn't think I needed one because I had 16 years of life experience plus the military. But that didn't pan out quite that way. So at 46 years old, I think it was, I enrolled in college and did an undergrad full-time. I'm working full-time, and graduated, accelerated graduation in 2012, December 12. December 11, 2011, I graduated. Did really well. I mean, often I'd walk into the classes and the professor would look at me like, "Are you here to teach the class?" I'm like, "Well, shit, no, I'm hoping you are because I don't know this stuff." I'm the wrong guy. And everybody else would look at me like, "Who's the old dude?"
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
So I finished that up, graduated, and I have a son whose story is not mine to tell, but Nick, I moved back up to New England because Nicholas had some problems and found himself incarcerated for a while. And I wanted to help him in the transition when he reintegrated into society.
Okay.
So I moved back up to New England and bought a small house. I mean, I had a home up here already, but I bought a small house, and Nick and I were going to move into that house together, and I was going to help him.
Wow.
Unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way. So Nick thought he was too old to go to school at 26 when he was released. So I applied to Penn State to do a master's degree, and I figured, what the hell, you and I will do this together. I'll show you. And we set up 2 offices downstairs in this room. But Nick couldn't get the medications that he needed. He's bipolar.
Okay.
He couldn't get his meds. He was going to the ER to try and get them, and they stopped giving them to him. So he ended up putting a heroin needle in his arm.
Oh my gosh.
So although Nick did not die, thank God, he was sent back to jail because he violated the terms of his probation. So he was self-medicating to deal with the stuff in his head, and they put him back in jail where he is today.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody really does. In fact, the first time, it's because it's not my story to tell, but that's kind of what happened. I mean, that's a very nutshell version of it. But so when Nick went back in, that's when I you're a parent, you know what happened. You spiral out of, if something happens to your kids,
it's over.
Your spouse is one thing, but your kids it's your responsibility. Yeah. So I kind of spiraled down myself and went into this really bad depression because I thought that I had created the best case scenario for him to reintegrate into society by moving in with him and doing everything. He was 100% prepared as far as I was able to help him, but the services were not there. He could not access the services he needed. So, he self-medicated.
It's so. Oh, well, I mean, I don't want to, quote unquote, feel sorry for you, right? Because, I mean, these are life choices and these are the way things happen sometimes. But the thing that I've never understood is, why do we criminalize use? It doesn't make any sense to me. And can you give insight into why the system is built the way it's built that criminalizes use? I mean, I have no idea, like you said. I'm not asking necessarily for you to divulge what happened with your son, but I don't understand why heroin use or even cocaine or any kind of drug use somehow makes somebody a bad person again, and they have yet to be rehabilitated, and we need to send you back to prison. That doesn't make any sense to me. It should be hospitalized and then and somehow cleaned up. I mean, again, just we all know. I mean, I hope you'll divulge this later, but that whole 30 days, man, just get me clean 30 days, and give me some hope, and then give me a support system, but don't send me to prison. I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, Nick's use was directly correlated and attributed to his lack of medication. So in the absence of medication, a lot of people with a mental health illness, and they're really the only people that I can speak to, because I don't know why other folks use medications, or drugs. I can't speak to that. Euphoric failing. There's multiple reasons, I'm sure. But as far as people who have a mental health condition, why they seek drugs is often to quiet their mind. Because I don't know if you've ever had a surgery, but that euphoric feeling you have just when you're going under or just when you're coming out,
right?
That's heroin.
Yeah.
And you can't think about or feel bad about or obsess about anything in that state of mind. Yeah. You are euphoric. And if you have a mind that is never quiet, and you've got committee meetings going on all the time while you're trying to socialize with people, or even significantly depressed or have clinical anxiety or social anxiety disorder, that kind of calms you down a bit. So there's not enough caregivers out there. Why do we criminalize it? Because there's not enough caregivers out there. And that's really so the reason I started this foundation, and it's kind of circuitous how this whole thing happened. I went ahead and went to college anyway. So Nick got arrested and sent back to prison about a week and a half before we were to start school. And I went ahead and started school anyway, because I needed to show him at some juncture that you don't get to quit just because it got really, really bad. So I went ahead and did the master's degree down at Penn State. And then I wrote my thesis on mental health in America, because I really did it as I was very self-serving in this. I needed to understand and placate myself. What just happened? What did I do wrong? How did I feel my son? I mean, that's kind of what you ask.
Right.
Part of my process and reconciliation and what had happened is I started at the beginning, the day he got out, and then over a period of a mental process, I would look at every single thing I had done or not done and evaluate the decision process. And I'd get to the end of the whole thing and say, okay, no, you did everything you could have done. And well, that can't be because he's in prison. And I would start the process over again until I could find what I did wrong. I didn't find it, but what I learned in this whole process is that we have a broken system, obviously.
Right.
So when I wrote my thesis on mental health, it was really to help me understand what just happened and what I could have done differently. I will tell you, Rob, I probably read and researched over 900 pages of information, and I printed out every single page and mailed it to him in prison so that he could read everything that I'm reading too, so that he would understand that, while you have some personal responsibility in what happened, there's also a degree of responsibility that you weren't able to take ownership of. You don't get to control your mind any more than you can say, I want cancer, I don't want cancer. You don't make those decisions. So I also gave him my final report, and I used a lot of folks as my test population and my database, or when I wanted to ask questions like, why did you do this? How did this happen? What could we have done differently? And to answer your question, we have a huge dearth in mental health care providers. That's what it is.
Wow. So, yeah, let me ask you that question. What was your experience like? Meaning you discovered all of a sudden one day wow, I've got issues myself. And that led you to looking into it and the discovery for yourself and the discovery for your son and then obviously eventually building this foundation. What was the moment where you woke up and said, holy cow, I'm damaged?
It wasn't so much the damage part, Rob, as it was that when I get the phone call from a lieutenant or over here on the Cape that said, your son's been rearrested, or your son's been arrested, and you should really get him some help for his drug problem. Well, I was completely unaware of a drug problem. And he hid it very well from me. And we were living together and working together every day. I just didn't notice it because he would answer questions, and I would believe whatever he said because, for two reasons. One, because I believed him, and the other two, because I wanted to believe him.
Right, sure.
I didn't want to believe that something was wrong. So my experience was depression, and the depression is when I knew that I was not going to see my son again for umpteen years. So I had gone 7 years without hugging my son or touching him or giving him a kiss. And as a parent, that's just unheard of. I spent all of my Thanksgivings and Christmas with him at the prison, talking to him on a phone through a glass window. So when he was rearrested, my world crashed, because you're a dad, you want to be a dad, and that's what we're here to do. And I had failed in that regard. And now my son who was devastated, of course, went back to prison. So I actually, depression is one of those things, there's several different schools of thoughts, and I'll subscribe to the one that fits me best. And that would be that there can be a trigger, that we all have the ability to suffer some form of mental health illness during a year. They'll say 1 in 4 people will experience some form of mental health illness during any given year. And mine just happened to be when that tragedy struck, and I couldn't see past today. I couldn't picture I still had a half a house that I needed to build with my son. Okay. And all the tools and all of his clothes that I had bought for him over the years were still scattered in this house that I had just bought.
Oh, man.
And here he was never going to sleep in it again. So now I had to go in there and take the sheets off the bed. And it was very, very difficult. And that's when my depression, it happened within days of him getting arrested and within days of me starting school. I actually made a hotline call. I called the VA, and because I'm a vet, I had access immediately. I mean, I was talking to a doctor 2 days later, sitting in front of a doctor, 2 days later. Whereas Nicholas had been out for 3.5 months, and he couldn't sit in front of a doctor at all because it was just none available for him. So on the upside for the veterans, I was able to get medication that could first help me rest instead of drinking myself into a blackout every night, so I didn't have to think about where my son was, because quite honestly, when he got out, we talked about his experience in prison, and that a lot of folks with the mental health illness won't take medications while they're in there because they can't defend themselves.
Oh, that makes sense. I never thought of that. Of course, I've never
Yeah.
been to prison, but wow.
Well, right, and I had never thought about that either. But Nick spent 6 out of 8 years in isolation.
Oh my gosh.
Because of his mental health condition, and because he's as big as I am, and he was one of the enforcers. He was the one that the guards went to get help, if they had a problem child. And of course, he would get locked up for it. So my experience, that was the end of July. It was the end of July 2012, and been on depression medication ever since. Not that big a deal to me. I mean, it's not. I mean, if I had to take insulin, nobody would give a shit about that.
Right, absolutely.
Right? If you used an inhaler, I mean, when I was young, the kid who was taking insulin or used an inhaler was the weird kid. Yeah. Well, we're past HIV/AIDS. We have a face for it. Magic Johnson, he's the face. He said, "This is what it looks like. Let's move on. Get educated. Become aware." And the same thing with LGBT. I mean, if you have something negative to say about a gay person or lesbian or transgender, you're on the outside looking in.
Absolutely.
I mean, we just don't tolerate that crap anymore.
Yeah.
Well, the next thing is mental health. We have to accept people for the fact that I didn't choose to feel like this. Nicholas didn't choose to be bipolar. People who have social anxiety or PTSD, think about our veterans in our law enforcement department. Nobody chooses it.
Yeah.
So,
it's like choosing a color, right? I mean, I was born this way. This is how I'm programmed. This is how I'm built, and this is how I respond.
Right.
Wow. I just, I have all these questions about your son, and I want to honor your privacy and his, of course, as well. But I imagine it felt like when he went back to prison, I imagine it felt like he had died.
Oh, that's exactly what it felt like. Yeah, because he was not there. And I had in my head, and this is really a subset. So I will, and the reason I can't share too much about Nicholas is because in the next couple of weeks, it's going to be in the Boston Globe.
Oh, okay.
Because Nicholas has opened up himself 100% without reservation to the Boston Globe Spotlight team,
Awesome.
That investigative team that did the movie on, and won the Academy Award. Well, that same group of people has written a story about Nicholas and I, which will be coming out here in Boston pretty soon. They're doing a 6-part series, and 2 of the parts have already been released, and Nick is coming up in a couple of weeks.
Wow.
And then it's all out there, and he's pretty brilliant. In my opinion, this is a guy who's incarcerated and is basically coming out and saying, I have mental health issues. This is my issues. Here's what's happened to me as a result of them. And he doesn't care what anybody thinks of him.
Yeah.
And I actually admire that quite a bit.
Wow.
He's got, if you don't like what I have to say, I can just unfriend you. Well, Nicholas is in prison.
Right.
You don't get to unfriend the guy beside you.
Yeah.
So that's it's a pretty bold mood. And he's like, Dad, someday people are going to have to know. And if you're doing all of this work to erase the stigma and to help people like me, then I'm going to be the first one to say, here's what's happening with me. So I admire him.
Yeah, I do too. And I understand why you're not going to let me scoop the Boston Globe. So that's cool. We're cool. We're cool.
Rob, it's been a year and a half.
Oh my gosh, man!
Yeah,
that's
working with this wonderful woman a year and a half.
Yeah. So then, what led you to start Quell? I mean, clearly, I get it. Your life experience has done that. But what was the defining moment that it snapped? It popped, and you said, "Okay, I have to build this thing." Why Quell? Why the name? I mean, I want to understand your branding. I want to understand your vision.
Cool.
And I want to know how you ended up in DC so fast, because that's amazing. I mean,
that's
talk
sick,
about God-given stuff. You just kablam. You were gone, and you're standing there. You're at the White House. You're talking to leaders. That just rocks.
It was absolutely amazing, and it's funny, and I'll definitely come back to this, but I want to address that one point first. My wife knows me, and she knows that when I get I'm your stereotypical Irish guy. When I got something in my head, it's in my head, and there's, you best not be in the way while I'm executing my
Right.
vision. Right? And that's kind of how this was, and she always was very protective of me. She saw what happened when I decompressed after Nicholas got rearrested, and she didn't want to see that happen again with the foundation. So she always told me, Kevin, just slow down. You don't have to go this fast. We have plenty of time. And now when they asked me to speak at the White House, I was just going to be a guest, and I registered to be in the audience, listen to a panel member. And when they asked me to speak at it, I excused myself. I gave her a call and said, hey, listen, Karen, they just asked me to speak at the White House tomorrow. Do you think I should slow down or go ahead and do it?
You're like, face.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
And
great.
see, okay, Kev, you're such an ass. Go do it. Congratulations. I'm so proud of you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But so the whole Quell Foundation thing, this is where it came from. Once I got all this information about mental health and I knew it all, I had really done my master's degree so that I could move on and be a chief operating officer in a hospital. I wanted to shape how we delivered care to patients, and I would have a broader audience to be able to do that at that level of an organization on the C-suite. But when I finished this paper and after I graduated, I had this 170, 180 page thesis in my hand, and I knew it. I knew it inside out. I knew the numbers. I knew the statistics, and I knew the problems that we were facing. So I talked to Karen, and while I was still interviewing for jobs, I was going around primarily the East Coast, talking to state legislators, talking to law enforcement, first responders, interviewing people all over the place, finding out what they knew about mental health and trying to substantiate some of the facts that I had been able to get to after forming and defending some hypothesis in that thesis. And the overwhelming reality is that we don't have enough caregivers, and that there's such a horrible stereotype and stigmatism associated with it that when we talk about it, we lower our voice.
Right.
I mean, you and I can talk about having colon cancer, and we'll talk about meds, doctors, surgeries, no issues at all.
Right.
But if we're both taking meds, we're not going to say what kind of depression medication you take and what do you take for your bipolar? How does it work? Do you like your doctor?
Yeah.
We don't do it.
Yeah. Make sure I'm not around you when you're off your meds.
That's exactly right.
Me. Because all of a sudden you become a weapon to them.
Yes, that's exactly right. So when I did get offered that big job, I got offered a position as a chief operating officer in a hospital, and it was my dream job. But I didn't take it. I talked with Karen, and we were fortunately in a position where I didn't need to be drawing that big salary right away at all. And we decided that I was going to start a foundation, a not-for-profit foundation, to try and make a difference. Now, I didn't have a name yet, and I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I did know that it was not going to be to try and bridge that gap in care delivery for people coming out of prison, because quite honestly, nobody gives a shit. I mean, that is not the message.
Yeah.
And they, by and large, society believes if they're there, that's where they belong. Well,
right. Let them
rot. That's exactly it. In the 70s, we closed down a lot of all of our mental health institutions and inpatient care beds in favor of community reintegration. We basically said, listen, go back out into the community. It will be better for you there, because the treatment you're getting in here is kind of, quite honestly, it was barbaric in a lot of instances.
Yeah.
It was inhumane. So I decided to start this foundation and focus on some of the problems that I identified. One is the dearth of healthcare providers. We don't have enough people. Even if you and I in this podcast gets every person in the country that has a mental health issue to stand up and say, you're right, I need to go talk to somebody, there's nobody to go talk to. It's not a sexy profession. I mean, nobody walks across the street and say, hey, I'm a psychiatrist or I'm a psychologist. Nobody does that. So we need to bring more people into this field. We need to make it more important that the next generation of caregivers say, I want to help people, and this is how I want to do it. And that's what we chose to do. Now, the name Quell, it took me a long time to come up with it. I didn't want to have anything to do with mental health.
Right.
Because if I said, hey, I'm running the Mental Health Foundation, you automatically say to yourself, well, I know everything he's about to say,
Right.
or I don't care.
Right. Right.
It's one of those two things. You've already formed your opinion. At least with Quell, like you have to ask me, what does it mean? Where did it come from? And I looked up the definition. I just like the name of it and the definition: to bring balance and order to chaos.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Yeah.
And
it's a cue. I'm telling you, there's something about marketing the cue.
That cue.
I've heard this for years. There's two letters. If you could have two letters in your brand's name, and I mean, I realize Quell isn't a brand, but yet it is a brand, right?
It is a brand, yeah. I own it now.
Yeah, it's Q or it's K.
Really?
Yeah. So for all my friends who think I'm a perv, I'm not a perv, but it's well known that the most famous porn stars in the world have K's and Q's in their name because people don't forget. Yeah, I'm telling you. You go. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm sorry, Jesus. So let me ask you this. Obviously, you're spreading the word about Quell.
Yeah.
So is one of your future steps to have a central, like a hospital type location where you can bring people in, like a building for the foundation? And the reason I ask this is because here in the Seattle area, we have Western State Hospital. Now, Western State Hospital was infamous for housing Frances Farmer in the 1940s. And I don't know if you know who she is or who she was, but Frances Farmer was an actress who was well known, and then through a period of hysterical events, that's what they called them, hysterical events, which could have meant everything from she's upset to she hasn't had an orgasm in a year. Right? Because that's where the term comes from, is that they hospitalized her and she became increasingly agitated. So they drugged her and she remained there for the remainder of her days. They put her in a hospital, they boxed her in, they drugged her until she died. And that is terrible and brutal, and yet they did it, and they did it under, obviously, state supervision, quote-unquote state care, and the family let it happen because, like you said, there's this mask, and nobody understands it. Nobody understands. I can't be in your brain. You can't necessarily physically demonstrate to me what it is you're feeling inside your head.
Right.
And they did this with my grandfather too. My grandfather had a stroke in 1995. And instead of giving him help, they said, okay, he's starting to have mental issues. They didn't use the quotes. And they put him in Western State Hospital, the exact same place Frances Farmer went. And he lived there until he died there. And they drugged him and increased it until he became an invalid. And then he literally curled in on himself. And by the time he died in the late 99, he was, quote unquote, a vegetable. And people wouldn't go visit him because they didn't want to see what the drugs and the, quote unquote, incarceration had done to him. It had formed him into this thing. And he would just, that's what he would do. Hi, Grandpa. And it was so intense and so brutal. And so I'm sorry for the long aside, but it's my hope that your foundation would find so much power that you could have a safe place, that it wouldn't just be a message, Kevin, but it would be eventually a centralized location. And granted, this is me dreaming for you maybe, but I love the idea of you having this safe place that destroys or usurps the power away from these hospitals that aren't really caring for anybody.
Yeah. So I don't want to disappoint you, but that's at this juncture, it is not in my it's not in my 5-year plan to have any type of facility. That I thought long and hard about where my niche was going to be, where I thought that my passion and drive and motivation could best serve this population of people. And going back to the lack of providers and trying to lift the mask and foster awareness, advanced training. What my goal is with this foundation is threefold. I have 3 strategies. One, to bridge the gaps in care, bring more people into the field. And I do that by providing scholarships to kids that are going into it, and by writing contractual agreements with colleges.
Awesome.
So right now, I am bound to two colleges that I will give them X amount of dollars annually for their scholarship program, so long as they're going only to people coming into the mental health care profession that leads to some form of licensure, so that we have somebody who can provide the care. And then I also have the advanced training. So advanced training, providing, in 2017, my strategic objective is to develop a training program for our first responders, law enforcement, EMS, firefighters, because nationally, right now, first responders are number 6 on the scale of committing suicide. So what that means is, out of the top 25 groups, if you want to, professions that take their life, law enforcement's number 6. In Massachusetts, it's number 1.
Wow.
So why are these people who have committed their life to serving others taking their life? It's because we're not providing them with the resources that they need. I mean, the fact of the matter is, Rob, if we have this opioid epidemic, which we do, across the United States, who's picking these kids up? Who's picking these bodies up? Who's taking them on? It's our first responders, and they're doing it 2-3 times a day, 5 times a week. And then they go home and have a birthday party for their 5-year-old.
Yeah.
It can't happen.
Yeah.
You know, they're mentally decomposing, and I want to be able to provide a training program that does 2 things. One is to help them recognize signs of this mental deterioration within their ranks, depression and PTSD, and thereby, as a collateral, they will be able to recognize it in the communities that they serve. So they will less likely, if I'm having an episode in the middle of the road, hypothetically, they're not going to assume that it's drug related. They're going to do these 2 or 3 things to try and evaluate if this might be indicative of a mental health crisis. And that way I don't get tased or jumped or handcuffed and exacerbate the situation.
Right.
So we're developing that training program. We're providing scholarships, and we're doing community outreach and community awareness events. So that's what I'm going to do right now. And I think the Lift the Mask campaign, which is something we should definitely address, is going to be enormous.
Yes.
It'll be enormous. But there's a lot of people on both sides of the medication issue because, to your point, your grandfather probably, while I'm not his caregiver, didn't have access to his medical records, unlikely needed that kind of medication.
Absolutely.
To the point that he could no longer advocate on his own behalf, and that's sad, and I'm sorry for that. Yeah. I want to be able to help this group of kids. Of 14 kids, we just distributed $50,000 in scholarship money a couple of weeks ago over at Gillette Stadium. Mr. Kraft's Suite.
Wow.
We had a luncheon for the kids and
that's
their
what
families.
That was. I saw photos of this.
Yeah,
you're very good at marketing, by the way. This is very cool.
That's where we were, at his suite, and these kids got a tour of the stadium, and it was amazing because for the first time, and probably safely to say in some of their lives, they were around 60 to 75% of the people in that room had a mental health condition, had a diagnosis. It's like a meeting for people that take medications for that kind of stuff, and it was pretty impressive. And these kids, Rob, going to school, they're not going for just ridiculous or silly degrees, and I certainly wouldn't mention what I think that those might be, but they're going on physicists, astrology,
okay,
psychology, psychiatry, a bunch of them. So it was kind of neat what they're doing.
Wow.
So that's what the purpose of the foundation is do.
I don't want to say that this is the way it is, but I've always found that people have what others believe to be a mental illness. And granted, I am no clinician. I have no way to discuss what I think is or isn't, and I don't currently, at least as far as I know, have a mental illness. It seems to me, though, that the brightest individuals in the world tend to be thought of as slightly off, right? And when I say slightly off, compared to the walking population that doesn't have these, again, mental illnesses. And I know this sounds like a weird tangent, but just hear me out, is Kurt Cobain with Nirvana, the singer, okay, clearly grew up in a caustic difficult environment, and that formed him in significant ways. But it was pretty clear that he also had some pretty serious issues that could probably be attributed to, some form of mental duress. And as he got older, he started medicating, going back to the heroin thing. And I'm curious if you're discovering that it's sort of the idea of the burning star burns twice as fast sort of idea with these kids who say they want to be astrophysicists and neurologists, right? Because they're brilliant, because they've been built a very specific way, almost like they're on the fringes of autism, and their brains are, the things inside their head are colliding in a way that they don't for you or I.
I have not had. I can't speak either way to that.
Okay.
I mean, right now, I would have to say that of the kids that we did provide scholarships to, they're all brilliant. But then again, I think that anybody who has got through the high school process and has applied to college and been accepted and is being treated for a mental health condition is pretty awesome to begin with.
Yeah.
I think and yes, are they overachievers? In many cases, they are overachievers. Yeah, absolutely. And maybe they're just the same as everybody else in their peer group, but they have to try that much harder. And recognizing that because society does not openly and overtly accept people that have a mental health condition, they have to hide it too. So they're not able to, talk to their friend and say, I'm just having a bad day. I'm having a difficult time with my medication.
Right.
I don't feel right. They're not allowed to say that kind of stuff. They can't say, well, it takes me 5 hours to read 3 pages of notes because I have to process and I can't pay attention to what I'm doing. OCD or depression, where I sit here and stare out the window for 2 or 3 hours. And what sometimes, that would happen to me early on. And I don't care what people think about me anymore, because that's what I'm finding, Rob, is that, and I have probably talked to safely over 2,200 people, and not a single person yet has ever said to me, nobody in my family has a mental health condition and I don't know anybody. Everybody knows somebody.
Sure.
61.5 million Americans are right now on a mental health medication.
So roughly 1 in 4.
1 in 4.
Wow, that's
1 in 4.
extraordinary. I had no idea it was that much.
Yeah, 1 in 4. That's exactly what it is. Yeah, can you imagine that?
No.
1 in 4.
I literally can't imagine that, but I mean,
right.
You're in
So
that space.
In any place, in any environment. So like myself, we could have had this conversation, or I could have never posted anything on Facebook. And if you were asked the question, so what about Kevin? You think he's got any type of mental health condition? Well, you might have said, yeah, well, he was a dick when I knew him earlier, but no, he seems kind of cool now.
Yeah, I like the new you, but I liked you then. But I know what you're saying. Yeah. I just was scared of you, but I liked you.
Well, there's still a lot of people that are scared of me now because I have a lot lot of passion around this.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I'm passionate about this because I don't like it. I don't think it's fair.
Yeah.
And we're losing a whole generation of kids. And you can see, so nowhere in any of my 3 strategic objectives of fostering awareness, bridging gaps, and advancing training did I say anything to do with incarceration and criminalization and convicts. Because I can't go there yet. Maybe I can go there in 3 or 4 years, but right now, if I need to get the funding to develop the program, my goal is to give out $200,000, $150,000 in scholarships across the country next year. And I want people to know that we're here. I want kids that have bipolar disorder or PTSD, anxiety, whatever, autism spectrum disorder. Fill out an application. Or if you're going to school to get a license or your doctorate in any form of mental health field, reach out to me because we want to help you do that. We want to help you do it. So the book that we're doing, the Lift the Mask.
Yeah, go for it. Tell me.
The Lift the Mask is going to be kick-ass. And this is what the whole Masquerade ball is about. So this big thing in November 19th, I don't know if you've seen it online.
Yeah.
It's kind of kick-ass too. We came up with the Masquerade ball because I don't know where I heard it, or maybe I came up with the hashtag Let's Lift the Mask. But essentially, that's what I did by saying, "Hey, I've been diagnosed with clinical depression, and this is a result of it." So my goal with the Lift the Mask is to collect stories from 200 to 300 people, and right now. what we're defining as a story might be a stretch, so I have to kind of confine that. I have to reshape and define it.
Okay.
I'm not looking for 5 or 6 pages. I'm not asking for Rob to say, well, when I was young, it started here and I did this all the way through, and today here I am. What I'm looking for in a very nutshell, concise paragraph or 2 paragraphs is, hey, my name is Kevin. I live in Massachusetts. I'm the president of a not-for-profit foundation. I've been diagnosed with depression. When I'm depressed, it feels like this. Sometimes I'll stare out the window at a tree for an hour while my mind races, and I want to do something, but I can't, because I have the committee meetings about where's my son, what's going on, everything that has to be done. And then what helps me is not when my wife says 10 times, are you okay? It's when she says, hey, when you want something to eat, or when you want to talk, come over here, I'll be over here. That's what works for me.
Wow.
If you ask me 10 times, I'm going to snap. I can't, if I could pull myself out of it, I would.
Yeah.
And over a period of time, I do. It doesn't happen often, but that's all I want. And because now we will have thousands of people that will read that and say, shit, that's exactly what happens to me. And as importantly, if not more importantly, is not how does it make me feel and who else can assimilate to that, but it's also people like my wife or caregivers or family, spouses, friends. And if they read that, they pick up this book, lift the mask, and they see several hundred stories, very brief, because you don't have the attention span to listen to, 100 people say, this is my tragic life. We've all got tragic lives. Right. So it's just this little piece. At some point, a friend of mine, let's just say a buddy of mine, picks up this book and he's reading about it and he says, oh, this guy, so when my friend Kevin's depressed, maybe I won't ask him or call him or email him 10 times. I'll just say, hey, I'm going to be here. If you want to reach out, let me know.
Right.
Not requiring me to do something. And that's where I want this to go. So in addition to that, having this book that's available, I wanted to eventually become required reading for degree programs. So if your girls are going off to school and they're going to be getting a degree in any form of mental health, let's read stories from the people who are living it. I get peer-reviewed and empirically based evidence is sensational and wonderful, but let's talk to the people who actually are experiencing it. Let me tell you what it feels like for me when this happens, so they can better treat that person.
Yeah.
We can both be diagnosed with the exact same thing, but we're not going to respond to medication, or it may not, you may want somebody to ask you, you may say, what, all I need is a cup of coffee, and I think that'll help me snap out of this.
Yeah.
It's really just trying to gather information to have a resource available to people who have an illness and people who have loved ones that have a diagnosis. And I want to use that for our first responder training, so maybe they can also read.
Yeah.
And it's every socioeconomic class. It's not just, it's not clearly this 61 million people are not poverty.
Right.
It's all social classes that have this. And that's why I want a title. And I don't want you to say, it's primarily up in the Northeast. That's why I want a state. I don't need your last name. I don't care what your last name is. I don't care where you work. What's your profession, so that a cop can see that, oh shit, there's 4 state troopers that are also having PTSD. Well, I get it. What do they do? So one state trooper that I've talked to, he's an amazing man. And what he said was, I take my dog for a walk. When I get home, I'm a crime scene investigator. I take the pictures of the dismembered babies, of the shooting victims. I take the pictures of all that stuff, and then I have to be an expert witness. And like, how do you process that?
Soul crushing.
Yeah, exactly. So over the course of our conversation, what it turned out, Rob, is that he says, I go home and I get my dog, and I take my dog for a walk, and I say, you know what Daddy did today? And I tell that dog everything I did in that day, from the minute I got in my car and left the driveway to the minute I got back. And I usually end the conversation with, and then I came and got you.
Wow. And
that's how he divests his brain of that stuff, because he can't burden his wife with it.
Right. So healthy.
Well, that's it. And I asked him, I hope you're sharing that with the next generation of crime scene investigators. And no, of course not. We don't talk about this shit.
Oh man. Yeah, because they'll cut him out of the force, right? Or they'll.
I don't.
in a position to
Yeah, right. You don't know, right? So I don't know what they will do, Rob. But yeah, something to that effect. Exactly. Sometimes they'll take your weapon away, but the point is, everybody in that department is probably feeling the exact same way. They're all probably feeling some degree of PTSD and depression for what they're doing day in and day out. And if you can just tell a half a dozen of them, hey, go get a freaking dog and go for a friggin' walk, it'll feel really good.
Yeah.
And we might be able to lower that suicide rate that we have that's really getting out of hand in this population.
Yeah. I love what you shared with me about you, though. I love how you told me, look, if I'm stuck looking out a window, it's not like I chose this moment. All of a sudden I'm looking out a window and I'm thinking and processing, and my brain is probably being overburdened. Right?
Yeah.
But you don't need somebody, even if they're concerned, to be tapping you on the shoulder saying, hey, Kevin, are you okay? Hey, Kevin, are you okay? You just need that, look, just give me this moment this catharsis, right? To look out the window and to gather my thoughts and to come back. And when I come back, I'm ready to go. Right?
That's it. Yeah.
So it's my hope, Kevin, and I have to apologize because I purposely didn't do something I always do for these podcasts. I purposely did not research this because I want to have a real conversation with you.
Okay, cool.
I mean, and don't get me wrong. I mean, it's very important to me. It is actually, it's fascinating to me. And I researched it enough to say I looked through your website. But the reason I'm sharing this with you is because I wanted to hear your story and I wanted to know how I can interact with you. And listeners of this, it's my hope that as we continue to discuss, and I do want to talk more, so if you have a little more time, I would love to ask you more.
I sure do.
But it's my hope that people would have heard just what I heard right there when you said, this is what I needed. And my wife understands that, and so she steps away and she lets me come back. And if this podcast can teach 1 or 100 or 1,000 people that my mother or myself or whatever, right, what is going through, that maybe slow approach would work, right? Or going to them when they're maybe in a better state of mind and saying, when you're going through this difficulty, how do you want me to respond so I can honor you and at the same time help you if you need help? Is that fair to ask?
I think I think it's fantastic, and I don't know. And I think that the difficult part, I think it's a great question. I don't know that we're able to answer that. So, this is really just a stream of conscious thinking right now. I mean, because Karen knows not to ask me several times, but I don't know if that was something that I said, hey, just give me this, or the fact that I didn't respond. I mean, I'll nod. It's just, I've heard a few different things, and it's a lot about for depression. And I'm going to talk about clinical depression. I can't talk about, and PTSD in some instances as well. You have to be very careful how you handle that, but you don't want to add additional weight. Now, this is just my experience, and I can't talk for the population at large. I can say that in my experience and in my research, that if you don't demand something addition from me, that's best. Because right now, if I'm in a situation that I don't want to be in either, I mean, trust me, I get a shitload of work to be doing, but I can't seem to move my arms right now.
Right.
It'll come, and then I'll be back in. But if you say, hey, give me a call, or you send me a text message and say, hey, I'm trying to get a hold of you, please reach out to me. That's something I don't need. I don't need that crap. I need to just come out of it by myself. Don't demand anything of me, because that's
it exacerbates.
You're not going to get it.
Right?
Yeah, I think it does. For me, I can compartmentalize pretty well, and this doesn't happen very often. It's just when I get in my dad mode, and I look around and I see a picture of, and I'm very conscious not to have a lot of stuff of Nick in my view, because I'd be paralyzed by it, because I would think about stuff.
Right.
I don't have pictures in my office of my son, because I wouldn't get anything done.
Well, I'm sorry then to even ask you these questions. I don't want to put you in a space.
No, we're good.
Comfortable, but I appreciate your clarity and honesty. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I think it's a tough thing, obviously, to discuss. Excuse me. It's tough enough to discuss these things about yourself, but when you're discussing others, and again, when you feel responsible for that, that's just
right.
It's brutal. Is there any hope for him after? I mean, will he be released soon?
Yeah, he'll be out. He has a year left.
Oh, okay, good.
So, yeah, he has a year left. He was sentenced to 3 to 4 years. And historically, people with the mental health condition will do the maximum of their sentence because they're non-compliant.
Oh, okay.
Because they're 3 times more likely to commit rules infractions, and in doing so, they get put in isolation or the segregation unit or areas like that, and they don't get good time. But they also have a formulary of medication in a lot of our Department of Correction facilities. And the formulary is a lot like the military, where no matter what was happening, they give you 800 milligrams of Motrin. You get a broken arm, we're going to give you some Motrin, you'll be fine.
Right.
So they don't give them a lot of the antipsychotics, and I understand. One of the things I did learn doing this program and doing a lot of research was that I don't have an axe to grind. I'm not pissed off at the correctional department. I'm not pissed off at doctors or law enforcement, because everybody, I would like to believe, is doing the absolute best that they can. If our Department of Correction officers are taking their life, then clearly, they're in a tough position themselves. Law enforcement is now the ones who respond to psychotic episodes, not doctors. And they bring them to the ER, and then they're back out on the streets because there's no beds for them.
Right.
So they're in a really tough position too. There's nobody to blame. We just need to have this paradigm shift. We have to change how society views and treats people with a mental illness. And to do that, we have to be a face of it. I have to say, hey, this is what it looks like. Will I always be on depression medication? Unlikely. No, probably not.
Yeah.
So how will Nick do when he gets out, to address that question? I would like to say he's going to do great. I know a lot more about it now. He knows a lot more about it now. But like with anything, I can't take his medication for him, and I can't tell him what's best for him, because he's a grown adult. Granted, he grew up in an unusual environment, and because of that, he's not accustomed to dealing with a lot of stuff. So he can't balance a checkbook. He probably wouldn't know how to open a PayPal account. He didn't know how to log on to a computer. He spent all of his formidable years in prison, but he's a smart kid. 1430 on his SATs.
Wow.
Yeah, right. He got a full scholarship when he got accepted to college. The second, when he was released, he got a full scholarship. He placed advanced in 3 of the subjects. He's a smart kid, but he's got those demons he's got to fight. And as long as he thinks he has to fight them alone, and he said something to me, and I actually read it. He wrote something to me that really impacted me quite a bit. And it was, even at 26, 27 years old, he was working at a gym up the street, Workout World, when he first got released. And he said, Dad, I see myself, I'm sitting here with all these people my own age, and they're all talking about everything. And I don't open my mouth because anything I say is going to absolutely horrify them, because my life experience is nothing like their life experience. At 22 years old, I may have been in isolation for 7 months with no clothes on, with somebody staring through a peephole at me. I wasn't going down to the beach with my Jeep. So he said, I had nothing to offer. And while I wanted to be part of this environment, it was clear to me that I had nothing in common with any of these people. And anything I said would scare the hell out of them.
Wow.
And that was sad. That was really tough. I mean, shit. So how do you protect your child from that? You can't.
Yeah. And how does he reintegrate? I mean, my brain, my concern for him, not even knowing before this call that this was the situation with your son, is now that I've heard this story is okay, well, what can we do to keep Nick safe? I mean, I want to personally fly out there and just hug him and hold him right now. It was just really, really intense for me. It's very, very emotional. Yeah. And I know I just feel for you, and I feel for him. Does he express what his desires are once he's released again?
Well, that's a really great question.
Or is that in the that's in the newspaper stuff, and I can't talk about it?
No, you can ask anything you want.
Okay, yeah, sure. I see.
You can ask anything you want, and we'll decide what gets answered. No, what I learned. Okay, so again, retrospectively, the education was invaluable. When Nicholas was released, I had a bunch of things lined up, and I said, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to be successful, and you're going to love it, and everything's going to be exactly the way it should be had you not disappeared.
Right.
Or what I learned after he got reincarcerated, and I started to interview people for my thesis. I started to interview inmates or ex-convicts about reintegration into society and some of the things that they felt were the most difficult for them. And in 100% of the cases, they said meeting the expectations of other people was the most difficult part of reintegrating because I have my own expectations of myself. I don't care about yours. And the secondary was I would get all these people would give me all kinds of stuff because I've been gone for so long and I didn't deserve any of it. So I didn't realize that by moving in with Nicholas and giving him a computer and buying him all these clothes and teaching him how to use a bank account, here's your TV and whatever you need, that I made it worse because he felt so guilty.
Right.
Like, why did I get all this stuff? I haven't done anything to deserve it.
Right.
So my hope for him when he gets out, I'd love for him to be somebody that comes and talks for the foundation around the country about this is what mental health looks like, and here's my experience in the correctional facilities, and that he would go on and get a degree. But I'm not going to recommend that. I mean, I put it out there. I say, well, Nick, if you would like to do this, the opportunity is here for you. But you make a decision for what you'd like to do, and I'll support that.
Yeah.
But that's a lessons learned.
Yeah, that it seems pretty wildly intense. I haven't had that experience, but after what you've shared with me, my brain tells me, Nick comes home and you just kind of say, "Here's your bedroom, kid. Just let me know what you need."
Yeah.
Obviously, you'll know what's best at that time, but I can't imagine there's going to be anything better than just hugging him and loving on him and just letting him be. Just letting him be, and just allowing him to reintegrate. It's obviously tremendously difficult to go through something like this because you, as a father, you want to help them through everything, and like you said, you want to give them everything you can and kind of relaunch them what you think is correct based on societal expectations, right?
Right.
But he's just like, I'm guilty and I'm nervous and I'm scared and I don't understand any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you guys thought about have you thought about a Kickstarter or something like that to increase awareness and to get additional funding for Quell?
For the Lift the Mask project,
well,
or
for the whole thing, the Lift the Mask project, for the foundation, because obviously it's a nonprofit, so you're looking for capitalization. That's always going to be something that's important. So what ways are you spreading the word besides social media and, for example, you getting into the White House? What other ways are you getting the word out?
That freaking White House was amazing. Let me tell you something about the White House, and I'll answer that question. So I got up there on the stage. Now, keeping in mind that I was just going to be a listener in the audience at the White House, and that in and of itself was pretty exciting to me. And then, it was just a series of events. Serendipitously, I find myself being asked to participate on the panel and to speak. So when I sat down there to speak, it was the first time that I'd ever said, and this being the second time I've ever said that I had diagnosed with I've said it out loud. Now, I wrote it, on social media. Hey, I was diagnosed with mental health. How bad, went for me. But I didn't have to read anybody's responses or anything. I didn't have to do anything if I didn't want to.
Right.
I didn't have to look at your face when you read it. So when I said it at the White House, I said to them, this is the very first time. Last night they asked me if I would speak, and yesterday I agreed that I would tell my story and speak a little bit. And I said, and quite frankly, I've never done this before. It's the first time, so I'm pretty excited to hear what I have to say myself. And it kind of broke the tension, because I had no idea what was going to come out of my mouth, and I just kind of let it go. And I said, I'm 6'4", 240. My mental health. I have been diagnosed with depression. Big deal. I mean, this is what it looks like. Who gives a shit? Really, who cares?
I'm a football player, dude.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. No, so Rob, the first thing they said, okay, and you'll appreciate this. So I'm being introduced, and the woman said, and next we have Kevin Lynch, an 12-year Army veteran.
Nice.
Kevin, what would you like to share with us? I said, well, I'd like to share that I'm not an Army veteran. I was in the Navy, and she was like, oh, mortified. Like that's major. snafu, you don't do that kind of stuff. And I said, don't be silly. I know that if any of my Navy buddies ever heard me not defend the fact that I was a bubblehead, I
Right.
would,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That's not allowed, man. Once you're in, it's a brotherhood. And I didn't get my Dolphins. I don't care if I was a seaman recruit, man. That was still the real deal, man. I was there.
Right. So how we're getting the word out? The folks over at the Boston Marathon gave me a bib number last year. Then I had a guy who was able to go run the marathon for us, and he raised quite a bit of money. But he did a lot of community events to say, I'm raising money for the Quell Foundation. This is what they do. This coming weekend, Runner's World is having their inaugural race up in North Andover, Mass. And they gave me 20 numbers, and I have 20 runners going out there wearing Quell Foundation jerseys, as well as I'm going to have a tent right there at the starting line, our big tent, and it'll bring people over so we can explain to them what the Quell Foundation and mental health is. And also later on this summer, the Falmouth Road Race, which is one of the more prestigious races in the country. We draw a lot of Olympians in non-Olympic years. I have 20 people going to that as well. But our big event is in November, the big Masquerade Ball. And I thought that was a great name to have because, we are trying to lift the mask. And it's mandatory. Everybody there has to wear a mask.
Nice.
It's going to be sweet. And we're doing a silent and a live auction. And our auction items, you would appreciate this. Our auction items are at all spectrums of giving. So we have a weekend stay in Napa Valley in a vineyard at the winemaker's home and private tasting.
Nice.
We have a tour of a submarine for private tour, 6 people.
Which one?
We're looking at getting what's that?
Which one?
They haven't told me which one.
Oh, man.
Yeah, but it's one of the new class. It's a new class fast attack.
Okay.
Yeah, a civilian that I know is able to do that for us. I just got a pair of Muhammad Ali's boxing gloves that are autographed.
Oh, man.
Zeno Chara, we got a pair of his hockey gloves.
Can I meet all your friends? Where do you get all this stuff, man? That's crazy.
It's awesome.
You're killing me.
We have a football signed by all 16 captains of the 2014 Super Bowl champions, the Pats.
Wow.
So, yeah, we got a lot of great stuff. And we expect to raise, my goal is $200,000. You take shots on net. It's all about shots on net.
Yeah.
If you don't ask, you're guaranteed not to get anything.
Absolutely.
Now, I will share this with you right now that my budget for the and I'm anal retentive about this stuff to the penny.
Okay.
I don't draw a salary and I pay my own expenses for this stuff. I need the money going to where it should be going. If I can put 5 more kids into college and give them a scholarship, then that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Or if I can pay for somebody to spend another hour developing this training program, that's what I want. But I will say that my budget for the Masquerade Ball, I have exceeded my budget, and I have already covered my budget and made $54,000. Wow. That's all to the bottom line right now, and we're in the middle of July for a November event. Every single penny that's coming in now is going to develop a training program for first responders or provide scholarships.
Wow.
And that's just kick ass. I mean, and I got my 501c3 December 18th, 2015. I'm 6.5 months into this.
It's crazy, man.
Over 300,000. Yeah.
Speed. It's just flying. Well, again, it's passion and purpose, right?
I think, you're right.
Do you know who Myles Munroe is?
No, I don't.
So Myles Munroe I tend to talk about this a lot, so podcast listeners are going to be like, dude, quit talking about Myles Munroe. Myles Munroe was a pastor from either Trinidad or Jamaica. I think it was Jamaica. But long story short is he was a public speaker, and he was what I would call the sort of Christian equivalent of Tony Robbins, right?
Okay.
But he got to this place where he focused singularly on passion and purpose. And his whole thing was, you will eventually find this space that you deserve and need to be operating within, because you live your life and you test drive and try all these things, and then you finally get to this moment where you go, whoa, this is my thing, right? And you release it to the world, and the world will test you and press on you, and you'll encounter a lot of speed bumps and maybe even some significant failures. But ultimately, as you fight your way through that and you increase that speed, and all the people that question whether Kevin Lynch is doing the right thing, or the Quell Foundation is the right thing, or the Lift the Mask, is the right thing, will see that you fought your way through it and not only have achieved speed, but then when they finally go, wow, okay, this is the real deal and Kevin's for real, they'll join in and you're in the atmosphere. I mean, it's just done, right? And it seems to me that the speed for you has happened very, very, very fast. I have no idea what your stumbling blocks were in the beginning, but I remember watching on Facebook when you started talking, when you started, sort of branding Quell Foundation. And the next thing I know, you're like you said, you're standing in the White House. It's like that is madness. And I was I was so envious, for you. I mean, I was obviously envious of you, but so happy for you. So
thank you.
Yeah, I want to be able to spread everything I can for you and help you build your vision. So I'm offering myself up to you on that. I don't know how I necessarily can, but it's my hope that whether it's 20 or 20,000 people listen to this podcast, that they will be impacted and they'll want to join in. And even if it's just financially because maybe they feel a little uncomfortable with it, or they recognize something in themselves, or they say, my cousin has X, or what I think maybe has X, and make a call and say, hey, reach out to Kevin, or reach out to the foundation, or reach out to somebody, and to start to get some answers. That's what this is about.
That's what this is about. That's exactly right. That you are not in a silo. This is not you against the world. That 1 in 4 people, 61.5 million Americans, have a diagnosed mental health illness right now. That 90% of the people that commit suicide have a diagnosed mental health condition. That listen to this statistic, and it's sickening. Every single state in the country has a mental health professional shortage area. That means that there's less than one mental health professional for every 30,000 people.
Whoa.
It doesn't even foot. It just doesn't even foot. So every county in Massachusetts, but 55% of the counties in this country have a shortage area. How are we supposed to help these people who want to have help? They don't want to be doing drugs. They don't want to self-medicate. They want to be part of society, productive members of society. I mean, by no stretch are you limited in what you're able to do. You can be in the C-suite somewhere. You can be doing absolutely anything that you want. Look at how many people, athletes and entertainers are coming out right now saying, I have depression, I have this. Who gives a shit if you have that?
Yeah.
I loved you before you said it. Now I think you're awesome.
Yeah. Marc Maron, perfect example, right?
Perfect example, right? Demi Lovato just came out. She just said, depression. There's a bunch of folks that are out there coming out, and heck, you can Google anybody's name. Richard Dreyfuss,
right?
Taking medications almost his entire career. The guy's brilliant.
Yeah, he is.
Do we judge him for that?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, and we would have done everything we could because of the national treasure that Robin Williams became.
That's correct.
We would have done anything if we had known. I think everybody in the country probably suspected, because you typically find that guys like Robin or say Louis C.K., right, or Marc Maron, these guys admit to having pretty brutal childhoods or something of the like that has sort of driven them into comedy. And the reason they're in comedy, right, is because they desire love and attention because they never got it, right?
That's correct.
But Robbins was amplified by serious issues, and of course, what did he have? Lewy body syndrome or something like that when he passed away. So at a cellular level, that's the thing. I mean, I know you know this because you're in the space, but at a cellular level, Robin Williams was depressed his flesh was depressed.
Right.
That's I can't even grasp it, and yet I know it's real.
Yeah. And it's just an education thing. This community awareness. When we do these events, when we start talking about it, when we get this book published and put it out there, just a small book. It's really just to help people understand, to reckon it. We don't have that face right now. We don't have the Magic Johnson. We don't have Ellen DeGeneres in the thousands of folks in the LGBT community that have come out and said, I'm gay, I'm a lesbian, I'm transgender. Who cares? Right. That's the conversation now. So I'm hoping we're able to get that same momentum for mental health, so we don't lose a population of kids, to suicide and drugs. Our generation isn't going to change it, but we're going to start the conversation. It's the next generation that's actually the fulcrum point in this paradigm shift, and they make the decision, because really they're the group of people, if you think about it, who don't put up with bullying anymore. They don't tolerate it.
Right.
They don't give two craps about gay and lesbianism. It's just this next generation has really changed so many things and so many societal stigmas, that this next one that's on them is going to be mental health. And I hope to just be able to have a small part in that, and maybe a little bit of a footprint. But I do look forward to seeing a couple of our graduates walk down that aisle someday in the future.
Yeah, I love that you're not driven by notoriety or greed, that this is just really your heart, Kevin. I think that's lovely. And it makes me think, I think of not only your story, but then I think of when you said it's 1 in 4. Well, this is not an American problem. This is a human problem.
That's correct.
So now we're talking about 1.5 billion people in the country of China alone. 1.5 billion. And for the most part, highly rural, poverty-stricken. And so what are they doing? They're sitting in mud puddles, being pushed aside because they're crazy, or they're being killed, right? Or they're killing the kids, or whatever's going on.
Yeah.
So this is, it's beyond an epidemic. It's a pandemic, and it's terrifying. And we need to do everything we can to get the foundation and your process accelerated. So what can I do for you? How can I help you? I mean, obviously you're here on the podcast today, but what else can I do for you?
I think one of the biggest things that I believe is going to help, of course, money is always there. You can't, it's easier to get a bigger audience and start broadcasting, getting billboards, radio spots, things like that, when you're able to pay for it and get it out there. But, the stories, for some reason, I am really bent on these stories right now that I think, and I'm going to do one myself so that I can get the example out there. On my website, we have Dennis and Liz Charpentier, mother and son. And Bob Gray, TBI, depression. He was a first responder. He was actually chief of the Arlington Fire Department, one of the first guys on the roof at the Pentagon during 9/11. Wow. Good friend of mine. So they have long stories, and they're fantastic. But I want people to know that if we can get them to put a synopsis, just something that they want people to know about them and their illness and what they want other people reading about it, to know how to help them. And if I can get 150, 200, 300 of these stories, then I can put a book together that we can make 500,000 of these things and get them out across the country. Absolutely. So that people can read. That's going to help this, because we have our perception of what mental health is shaped by and large by what media provides us. Right. Or our exposure. So where did my perception of mental health? One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, The Shining. Right. I mean, you're a freaking nutcase and you're dangerous. Yeah. So and what we portray on TV, prime time, and as well as different forms of media, is that mental illness is bad, and that's where all the violent crimes are coming from. In fact, there was a study done in 2012 that primetime dramas and TV in newspapers showed that 86% of violent crimes were committed by folks with a mental health illness. But that's just our way of reconciling with these violent crimes.
Right, and not answering it.
Yeah, right. The reality is, the actual numbers, reality was less than 4.3%. Wow. I mean, so why are we further ostracizing this group? So how can you help? The stories is important. I need to get I need to get corporations involved. I've got a phenomenal backing with U.S. Bank, who has come on board as one of our large sponsors. Just sensational group of people over there, and several others. Many others that once we get their logos and stuff and releases, that we'll be announcing them as well. But I need a national organization. I need an Aetna, Humana to back us. To give us $50,000 or $500,000 so that we can develop this program. Restricted giving if they want to do that. But I want to be able to put as many kids into college and into this field as we possibly can, so at least we're able to treat them. And I want to help our first responders and our law enforcement agencies, especially in what just happened in Dallas.
Right.
these people will close their eyes every night for the rest of their life and hear those gunshots.
Yes.
They just will.
And they'll watch their friends die over and over.
And they'll watch their friends die. And that's what's happening to our veterans. I love our vets. I've been in bed with them. I've done 500-mile bike rides with them. And they talk about this openly and honestly, but I've seen what PTSD looks like, and it's terrifying. It's not something that they want to experience, and I want to be able to help them. So I think raising money, people want to do the right thing. They want to do good. I've yet to speak with somebody who didn't feel impacted in some way, shape, or form. So I need some organizations to step up and say, we want to help you out in your mission, and our foundation is going to help fund you. Or I'd like to give you my story. And that's it. So the website, thequellfoundation.org, I have to give a nod to MOD Worldwide. Nina and John Stanley and their entire team have donated every single bit of that. They designed, built, and host that entire website completely free of charge. It's amazing, wow. The dedicated team of professionals that they have over there, and they did it for nothing because they're passionate about this too. I mean, it was just amazing that happened.
So for listeners, is there a best number that if somebody were going through an issue that they knew they needed help, or they wanted to discuss their story with you or somebody at the foundation, is there a best number to call?
If they wanted to talk to me about their story, yes. Now, going through something, I cannot, and I just want to make this clear because I don't want to mislead anybody. I am not. Our foundation does not provide referrals. We're not allowed to. And we don't have we wouldn't provide recommendations either. What we're here to do is specifically those three things, as well as, the bridge gaps, advanced training, and create this paradigm shift, but also for this lift the mask. If they wanted to talk to me about it, they can talk to me about it in 561-722-1938. I can lead them down that path, or they can go onto the website, and there is a tab there that says mask, and they can fill out that form and click their story, or cut and paste their story to it. That comes directly to me. And it's important to know that once we get these stories, we're also we're gonna shape them a little bit. We'll do any edits that we have to edit, that we have to do in grammar. That's New England, huh? Wow.
Wait, are you gonna call it Oregon next?
Every now and then I'll hear that accent and I'm like, who the hell just said that? Yeah, we'll correct their grammar.
We got to go down to the harbor and get some lobster. It's great.
Wow. That's tough when I hear myself say it. I get
it's
offended.
Beautiful, man. It's regional thing. It's cool. Trust me, outside of it, people love it, man. It's
that's
a
what
great
I hear.
accent. It's a great accent.
My gosh. So they can go to the website, and that mask thing is there. They can submit it there, or they can just shoot me off an email, klynch@thequellfoundation.org.
Great.
Anything that we can do to help. I mean, that's what we're really here to do, and we're going to be here for a long time. Hoping to move this Masquerade ball somewhere else in the country next year.
Nice.
Start taking it across the country. This is a national thing. Yeah. Certainly not a New England thing by any stretch.
Well, bring it to Seattle, and I'll help you put it together. I've got an auctioneer and everybody ready out here already. It's really true. I do. So I would love to help you out here if you want it.
I absolutely want it. Yeah, we can fill that place. That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a great destination to do it. So my goal is to have it the weekend before Thanksgiving every year because it's a break for the students.
Right.
Close to the students. And while we're giving them scholarships, and everybody who goes to this foundation or to this Masquerade ball, I'm going to have all of the scholarship recipients there. Many of them we're going to talk. And it's really going to be a cool event. And it's not a downer at all. We'll have 2 or 3 people talk. We'll have 2 or 3 live auction items, big number auction items. And then we're going to have a party. I mean, I have an 11-piece jazz band, 11-piece band that's set up to play for 3 hours after we finish dinner. It's a party. I don't want anybody to think that they're going to go there and get all depressed and go home during the holidays. This is going to be fun.
So if I wanted to attend that event, or I wanted to drive people to attend that event, where would they buy tickets? At the Quell Foundation?
At thequellfoundation.org, again, the folks over at MOD have set it up really well. You go to the events tab,
Okay.
and then you'll see Masquerade Ball, and you can buy your tickets right there. The tickets are $325 a piece.
Okay.
It's a heavy lift for a lot of folks, but certainly that money is going to the greater good. A lot of our stuff has been discounted heavily. Over at the Chatham Bars Inn, which is probably one of the premier places on the Cape to go, they have really helped us out quite a bit.
Wow. Where exactly are you on the Cape, if you don't mind sharing? You don't have to give me a street, but are you in Buzzards Bay? Where are you at?
Oh, that's cool. No, I'm over the bridge. So Buzzards Bay is just on the other side of the bridge, the Bourne Bridge.
Yeah.
And I'm just on this side. I'm in Falmouth, Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so right before Woods Hole. In fact, I just met a woman who I absolutely bowed to when she said that she was on the DSRV Simon.
Oh.
She worked out of Woods Hole, and she said they went down to like 8,000 meters. She said, I don't know how many feet that is, but I'm like, well, I know how deep we went. That's pretty damn. You're my hero.
Yeah. In fact, I want to go back somewhere really quick on this, because I remember when we went down. Of course, we can't talk about it because we're still it's secret information. But when we went down to test depth, and I remember the look on your face, because you had done it a number of times. And I was like, the first time I realized, holy cow, Kevin doesn't like this at all. That moment where you go down there and you can hear all those creaks and everything when they're pushing the boat to its limits. And I'm just thinking, this is the greatest thing in the world. And you can't imagine what it's like outside. And you're like, dude, I just want this to get over, man. I just want to go back up to periscope depth and go back to life, right?
That's exactly it. When you start seeing strings, when you start tying those strings across, and, I've been on board when they ruptured stuff, and, the packing is blown and periscoped out. You just know. And when you start having water in the people tank, it's uncomfortable because you're not freaking oh to the top of that, not from down there.
Yeah, you're not. What did they say? You put a needle in your eardrum and you just blow out. And I'm thinking, yeah,
right.
I'm sorry, you're not going to get out, man. You're just going to die. There is no fixing this. What do they call that? The mom. Something about your mom, like it makes your mom feel good, like the idea of the escape thing.
That's just for your mother.
Yeah, it's for your mother. It's not going to work. You're going to die here, buddy. If there's a fire on board, you're going to die.
Yeah. I think that we like to scare the heck out of each other, but we're a special group and class of breed of men and now women that go down there and do something like that. It's to this day, something I will share with you also, Rob. Once I came out and said, I had this, I've been diagnosed with depression. I have had not less than 14 or 15 of my former shipmates come out and send me private messages and say, I have this also, or I lost my brother to this. They're all coming out of the woodwork. When somebody makes it safe, that's what we're trying to do with this paradigm shift and creating social awareness and making it how we treat people with mental illness a little bit more, community more receptive to it. As we move forward and do that, more people are going to come out because we're making it okay. Yeah. We're saying it's okay. Yeah. How many people came out and said that they were gay after Ellen DeGeneres, and now, and it's just over and over and over again. It's everywhere. They're coming. I hate to use the term coming out of the closet, but they're no longer the exception to the rule.
Right.
They're no longer alienated and ostracized. I'm sure in some communities, but you get my point.
Right.
I want that to be the same thing for mental health. Yeah. We should be able to have that open conversation at a bar over a beer, and it's not that big a deal.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that I discovered with the whole concern over the gay issue, whatever everybody wants to call it, or the homosexual issue or whatever, is when have I ever been asked if I'm straight or gay? I mean, I've never had anybody walk up to me and go, "So are you gay or are you straight?" Because of a personality quirk or some weird belief that I do something that's quote unquote stereotypically gay, right? What, cry? Because I'm a guy who cries? Seriously?
That's it.
And so yeah, we are at a place in our life where we've been numbed to it, and I think that's a really good thing. And it's my hope that we would be able to do the same thing with this mental illness. I think the difference is that it's rarely seen on the surface, right? It's only seen on the surface if somebody's done something bad. You know what I
That's
mean?
right.
It
Yeah.
goes back to the thing you said earlier. It's the stereotype of you're either crazy or, to use the 1972 word, retarded, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
one of those two things. Oh, Billy's just retarded,
Yeah.
or Billy's crazy. But Billy didn't know what was wrong with Billy. He just did his thing, right? And then
Yeah.
later on, he's starting to wonder why he has to behave a certain way, and it's because he has to,
That's right.
right?
Yeah. So here's the example that I give to some people when
Sorry
I'm trying
for the
to
weird aside, but yeah, please tell me. Yeah.
When I'm trying to shape their view of what this is, or help help put some form to it, is that if you and I go to war, and we're both in war together, battle together, and I get my legs blown off, as many of our veterans have, well, everybody for the rest of my life sees my disability, if we wanted to call it disability. So just for the purposes of this conversation, everybody sees my physical disability for the rest of my life. Now, if you picked up my legs, your buddy's legs, and brought them to a helicopter, what in your life prepared you to carry another man's legs under your arms that are bleeding? And what does that do to you mentally long term? Nothing prepares us to do that. So if our population, if society can understand that we can't train our veterans, male and female, to witness such horrors and not have them emotionally be impacted, it's shameful. So now, if you and I are now out at a bar somewhere at dinner and my legs are blown off and you're sitting beside me, who's got the illness? I mean, who has a disability?
Right.
I do, but they don't know that you're the guy who picked up my legs,
Right.
and because they can't see it or touch it. And that's what we have to make okay. We don't need to have 22 veterans a day putting a gun in their mouth, and taking their own lives, because they're not able to reach out and ask for help because they don't want to be identified as weak. We have to make it okay.
Well, you're doing it, man. You're doing it.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate this. You've taught me so much today, and hopefully people that hear this, and hopefully it's bazillions, I'm going to use the word bazillion,
I like it.
hear this. I'm going to claim it right now. Bazillions of people are going to listen to this. is just do everything you can to listen to this whole thing. Don't listen to 5 minutes of this podcast. Yeah, I go all over the place, but listen to Kevin's story and listen and read about the foundation and discover what they're doing and do everything you can to bring value to them and to increase their message, because this is life-changing. This is world-changing, and very few people have done or made the choice to do what Kevin's doing with this foundation. So I just can't encourage you guys enough to do everything you can. And Kevin apparently broke something on the other end of the line.
That's my dog.
Oh, hey, dog. Anyway, man, this has been killer, and I hope after the fall event here that's coming up, we can have a catch-up conversation, and you can fill me in on what's going on and how things are working. And again, I mean, I absolutely offer it up to you. I will literally offer myself to you to help you do what you can. And if we want to build something out here, I'm happy to help you with that.
That's fantastic, Rob. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and helping the foundation gain this exposure. And I hope we reach a lot of people out there and help them to understand that you're not special, other than the fact you're willing to lift the mask. Yeah. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, buddy. You be well, cool. And let's stay in touch, okay?
You got it. Thank you. Awesome.
Rock and roll.
Bye-bye.
Bye.